of the U.S. House of Representatives swung open. Donald Trump, his face set in that familiar, defiant smirk, walked into the room under the weight of history, scandal, and denial. Outside, the country was buzzing. The missing Jeffrey Epstein files, the interviews, the redacted memos, the woman who'd spoken to the Federal Bureau of Investigation had dominated the news cycle for 72 straight hours. Inside, 6 survivors of Epstein's abuse sat in the upper gallery, watching. They had been invited by Democratic lawmakers to remind the world who the story was really about. Trump began his speech as if none of it existed. He started with the economy, a performance that swung between fever and fantasy. "I inherited the worst inflation in history," he declared, "and I turned it into the greatest economy the world has ever seen." Except history didn't agree. The worst inflation had come decades earlier, in the 1920s and 1980s. And the numbers he rattled off about gas prices and jobs weren't just wrong, they were pure fiction. But accuracy was never the point. Speed was, momentum, the illusion of power. Trump spoke so fast at times that even the teleprompter seemed to lag behind. He bragged that Americans were winning too much, that they were begging him to stop winning. The chamber shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't policy, it was theater. Then the tone changed. He slowed down, and what followed was something else entirely. Gone were the boasts about GDP and jobs. In their place came scenes of violence, long, graphic monologues about blood, death, and vengeance. He described victims covered in blood, people bleeding out on the floor, and gushing wounds. Even the networks, used to the chaos of his speeches, fell silent. It was less politics than spectacle, a kind of televised horror. At one point, he told the story of a woman allegedly attacked in North Carolina, claiming the assailant had crossed the border because of open borders. The claim was false. The woman's attacker wasn't an immigrant. But the truth had stopped mattering 30 minutes earlier. For the next hour, the speech dragged on, an unprecedented length, shattering records for the longest State of the Union in U.S. history. Analysts later said he seemed to luxuriate in the gore, stretching each violent vignette like a showman savoring applause. When it finally ended, he left the stage quickly, refusing to look toward the gallery, toward the survivors who had sat, unmoving through every word. Below them, chaos. Representative Al Green of Texas, holding a cane in one hand and a sign in the other, stood up at the start of the speech to protest the racist video Trump had shared days earlier, one that superimposed the faces of Barack and Michelle Obama onto apes' bodies. His sign read, "Black people aren't apes." Security moved in almost instantly. He was escorted out, but the message lingered, hanging over the chamber like smoke. By the time Trump exited, the cameras were already turning toward the Democratic response. But in the corridors, the conversation wasn't about taxes or inflation or even immigration. It was about the other story, the one his administration couldn't outpace. The missing files, the woman's interviews, the case that wouldn't stay buried. As Senator Cory Booker told reporters hours before the speech, Donald Trump is violating the rule of law. He's violating judicial orders. He's taking our children. He's violating our public safety. This shouldn't be business as usual. Our country is in crisis.